Although fall is my all-time favorite season, for obvious reasons, summer has my heart for its embedded associations with rest and exploration. In honor of co-hosting Escape the Readathon in the month of May, as a team leader for the Vacationers, I'm exploring in this vlog the subgenre of vacation thrillers by reading The Villa by Rachel Hawkins and The Island by Adrian McKinty. I first started out reading The Villa during one of our mood reading weeks. Okay, I hate all the men in this book. I got to around page 100, and The Villa is a dual timeline story. It's categorized at my library as a mystery, a thriller, and you're kind of going back and forth between the different time periods. There's one that's set in a modern time period. There's one that's set within the 70s. I was pleasantly surprised to see that this book actually includes some mixed media in here. You get I think text messages, for sure emails, you get podcast transcripts. So I thought that's really cool. I like that, especially as you transition into different chapters, it does kind of fill in some information that you didn't get as a reader that I think is really important to the story. The book is called The Villa because it's based off of this really beautiful, relaxing vacation spot in Italy that these two different groups of people in their separate timelines go to, and stuff goes down in those specific locations. But this story is really dragging. I think I went in with the wrong expectation of this being more of a thriller. So I was expecting a little bit more drama, a little bit more compelling storylines, but it feels kind of obvious what happened. I don't know. The 1970s timeline really is dragging for me. There's not a lot that's really happening. And maybe that's the appeal of this book. Maybe I'm not the right person and I'm trying to explore are vacation thrillers my vibe? And I did really appreciate the scenes where you have, in the more modern timeline, they're cooking and relaxing and doing really vacation-y, beachy things. But it doesn't seem like there's too much happening. It's a really slower paced book, and it just doesn't match my expectations for a book that is categorized within the thriller genre. So that's kind of disappointing at the 100-page mark. Things should be coming to a head. There should be something setting us up for that larger tension that's supposed to be really ramping up in the rest of the book. So those are largely the things I really don't care for. I did find interesting though the friendship dynamics in both of the timelines. They definitely parallel each other, and I always really like to see friendships, specifically female friendships, play out in stories. So this book is very much giving that to me. The book flap itself mentioned that it's inspired by Fleetwood Mac, the Manson murders, and the infamous summer Percy and Mary Shelley spent with Lord Byron at a Lake Geneva castle, the birthplace of Frankenstein. Something that originally got me wanting to read this book in the first place was its very whimsical, bohemian, eclectic kind of vibe it was giving off. I kind of see the Fleetwood Mac part because you have a group of a mixed gender band or just a group of artists, and there's a lot of drama with Fleetwood Mac, ultimately leading to their eventual breakup, and you do see a lot of drama going down with these groups of people in the 70s timeline. I don't really see the Manson murder situation. I guess because the night of Sharon Tate's murder, there were a lot of people there, and then you have some past lovers and just kind of drama going on with that friend group the night she was killed, so I guess you see that. But what really shines through is how Rachel Hawkins is really trying to create those parallels between Mary Shelley's life. I won't spoil them all because I think that's part of the fun. But if you think about the names and what happens and the dynamics and all the kind of plot points for each of the characters, and if you know anything about Mary Shelley and Percy Shelley's life, you'll see just how much they parallel. All you gotta do is just go on Mary Shelley's Wikipedia page after you read this book and you'd be oh, yep, check, that's what she experienced. Oh, yep, that check. It's funny, there's direct connections, and I enjoy that because I think Mary Shelley is a badass, and I really love Frankenstein. I almost DNF'd this at the 70% mark. I checked on Goodreads to see what other people had to say about it, and for the most part, it's a pretty well-liked book that I guess, I don't know, something about it, it's kind of hard to put my finger on it, it just isn't working for me. I think it has a lot to do with the characters. I think they're meant to be extremely unlikable, especially the two women that are in that more like contemporary modern timeline. Even though I had the audiobook, I still really felt disconnected from the story, and I really didn't like the choices that the characters were making. Like that ending and the way things wrapped up just had me feeling not good. Like I didn't get closure from that ending and the ways things wrapped up. I didn't feel thrilled. I didn't feel like there was any type of mystery or tension that was built. Everything pretty much was set in the premise of the book. I feel like it revealed too much about what was going on, and there wasn't a lot of like tension, mystery. Nothing was really unexpected. I'm not well versed in the thriller world, and I felt like I could kind of see where things were going. Like the foreshadowing was just a little too heavy. The things I did like about this book was the setting, and I really loved that it talked about female friendships. Although the female friendships in this book were extremely flawed, I didn't really like the choices the characters made, especially in the modern timeline where you have one best friend being the world's worst best friend and somehow she's like forgiven. It was just weird and didn't make sense to me, the ending. And I also did like the references and allusions to Mary Shelley and Percy Shelley's life. I thought that was really cool because I really love her. So that was really cool to see. Like the further you get into the story, the more parallels and connections to Mary Shelley's life really shine through in the story. Ultimately, this one did not work for me. I gave it 3 stars, and I am looking for something a little different. So I started the audiobook for The Island. My library has it. I'm still really sad that The Villa didn't work for me. I had a lot of high hopes for it based off of its like 1970s vibe. And I'm hoping that The Island really pulls through in giving me something that's a little bit more thrilling and intense. Like I want to feel things. I've already gotten to the 50% mark in this audiobook. I'm like flying through it because it feels very much like an action movie. The basic premise for this story is that you have a family that goes on like a vacation. They go somewhere that they're really not supposed to, and then they experience something really intense. They get stuck on this island, and then they have to like fight for their own survival against this family that is trying to seek its own revenge. So at the 50% mark already, we have everything in the premise that's already been told to us. It's really intense. I can't put it down. I keep wanting to listen to it. The kids are really annoying, but I think they're kind of supposed to be. There's like this huge disconnect between their new stepmom and the 2 kids that are in the story. So I'm assuming their relationship is gonna develop throughout the course if like they all make it out alive. I guess we'll see. The stakes feel really high, and I think that's what The Villa was really missing for me. And that's something I'm realizing as a newer reader to the thriller genre, that like the stakes really need to feel high for me. There has to be something risked. There has to be some issue that I feel like is a moral dilemma. I don't think it's the most like unique story I've ever heard, but it's a really quick and easy read, and I have no clue how they're gonna get themselves off this damn island. I'm at the 80% mark, and I'm at the point in the story where things are like so freaking sad. There were 2 deaths, and it was so sad because they're just, the author really builds them up, and they're just such great people, and then yeah, things don't end well for them. I'm really liking how the relationships between these characters are developing. I don't think the characters themselves are like anything to write home about. I like the way that the relationships are evolving. It feels really natural, doesn't seem too inauthentic. And something I also like about the book is that you get backstory, but it's interwoven and revealed to us in like little bits and pieces and not all at once. Just a little bit more digestible for me as a reader. I feel a little bit more ingratiated into these like younger child characters, because 20% ago, I was just like, oh my gosh, these kids are so awful, so ungrateful. They have no concept of like what it means to parent. And now I hate them a little less, so I think that's good. But yeah, the last 30% of this book has been like really sad, really intense. A lot of good action scenes. Like this really does feel like an action movie. And I think it's also being adapted into a series, I believe. Maybe like HBO, Hulu, I forget which one. Fingers crossed things wrap up in a way that makes sense, because I really don't know how this author is gonna get them off the island. Like what makes the most sense? They either need to come up with like an agreement with this family that's holding them hostage. They have to steal the ferry, but I don't know how they'd learn how to drive that. They can't swim because they're sharks. So yeah, I think the ending is really gonna make or break this book for me. Alrighty, so I finished The Island. The main character, I loved her. I thought she was really great. She was totally kicking ass. It was really cool to see that there are aspects of her identity, her background, that weren't necessarily strengths to her. To have her be able to use them as assets in this really random awful scenario was really cool to see that explored. However, I did not feel like the way things wrapped up, I don't think it really measured up to like the rest of the book. It just felt like it was a cop-out and I was underwhelmed. I think that's just the best way to put it. I was really underwhelmed by how things were wrapped up and how this book finished. I would still recommend it. I would still watch it if it was adapted. Yeah, it just didn't measure up to the rest of the book. But I did like it far more than I enjoyed The Villa, so I think I'm gonna give it probably like 3.5 stars. When I think back to my 2 reading experiences, reading The Villa and reading The Island, I don't know if vacation thrillers are really my jam. I think I'd be open to trying more of them, but as a subgenre, I don't know if they really mesh with me, but I'll keep the door open. And I thank you all so much for watching. If you have a vacation thriller recommendation, either a book or a film, definitely leave that down in the comments below. I'm really interested in exploring this more this summer, so I'd love any recommendations you'd send my way. Before I wrap up this video, I wanna make sure that I give a huge shout out to the vacationers. You've all been rocking it this month as we've been trying to escape from this haunted house. Escape the Readathon has been such a fun month-long readathon, mastermind by the amazing Lexi from Books with Lexi. So be sure to give her a follow and all the other amazing co-hosts if you aren't already. All the information for that is down below in the description. I will see you all in my next video. Bye!